And now your feature presentation.
Edgar, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about the film. I can't emphasize this enough. The Richard Bachman novel, Stephen King's pen name, this novel is so bleak and disparaging at times. How do you balance that as a screenwriter and working with Michael Bacall with both the commercial and the creative aspects of it and finding sort of a balance tonally?
I think, I'm a huge fan of the book. It was the reason I wanted to make the movie because I felt that there was a whole other film in the material. The 1987 version very loosely adapts the book. And the thing that was really, I think the thing that I really wanted to bring to the screen was the feeling of being on the game show with him, that you see that entire thing through Ben Richards' point of view. So, it's not as bleak as the book, but I think it still has the sort of the fire and the anger.
Was there a character within that story that you wanted to expand further outside of Ben Richards? Because obviously, with that 87 film, Killian almost feels like an amalgamation or a composite character in a way.
I think most of the characters in it, I think Ben is entirely different in the book. Killian and Bobby T are separate characters, so we wanted to bring that to the screen. And there's a lot of fun to be had with, Michael Cera's character Elton and Bradley, played by Daniel Ezra. So most of the characters from the book have not been seen on screen before.
One thing that I always love when I watch one of your movies is the transitions in your film. Specifically, in this, we have a treadmill going into a tryout montage. When you're in that writing stage, are you thinking about the editing and even the cinematography of the movie? And are you thinking about working with Chung Hoon Chung in terms of what shots you're going to create within the script itself?
Yeah, although that kind of comes with the storyboarding process. So it's I mean, obviously, I love working with Chung Hoon. He's incredible. Um, but yeah, I think you're working on the script and then you're working out the sort of the transitions as you go, and then the first thing you do, especially with the more complicated visual sequences, is storyboard them. It really is a roadmap for everybody else to understand how we're going to do it, and also to be kind of like economical about it as well. Like once you've drawn something, it's like, this is the angle that we're looking at.
Was there something within while you were shooting that changed or gave you a greater sense of like happy accidents, when you're filming something that you didn't see until you were filming it?
That's a good question. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there are things. I mean, usually those are things to do with locations. That there's something a location offers that you hadn't previously thought about. I'll tell you a good example. There was like the sequence where he kind of spends the night in what we call the dream house, where there's like a new development. That was like an existing kind of commercial set in the middle of nowhere in Bulgaria. I think in this, and so I was thinking, well, we should just use this. Like, this is amazing. It's just this kind of like American suburb just standing in the middle of a field.
But in Bulgaria, of all places.
So it looked particularly like interesting. So that was something that wasn't really in the script. I said, well, hey, we should use this.
Does that create a different atmosphere when you're shooting somewhere that isn't in America but is an American location? Because there are plenty of productions, even thinking like a Barbarian recently, which was shooting also in Bulgaria, I believe, with some of the Detroit sequences.
Well, we shot in London, Glasgow, and Bulgaria. And I mean, I really love it in sort of science fiction films where you're using existing architecture to tell a story. So actually, we had a great kind of like location manager, that we worked with to sort of find places where we could kind of create this idea of this near future dystopian, like Northeast America, because we're shooting in what's called Co-op City and Boston and New York, and then out into the country. So kind of the combination of the UK and Bulgaria was really great for that as well. We never quite get to Canada, but he's heading.
No. But I mean, you already did Canada with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So, I mean,
we have the Canadian flag in it.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, was that a part of it as well? Because you are bringing in Michael Bacall and Michael Cera and working together with the team again. Is that important to you to work with collaborators that you've worked with before in that way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were some people on this movie that I hadn't worked with before who were fantastic, but also, we had quite an ambitious schedule. Like, we only started filming just over a year ago. And I don't think you could get through a movie of this size without a lot of people that you really trust.
Does that change also how you approach something that is bigger in scale and scope compared to, say, the Cornetto trilogy or even Scott Pilgrim, just in terms of the size, or does it really even matter?
I think ultimately, whatever the budget level, you're trying to do the same thing. It's like you've been given some money to make a movie, so you better make sure that A, it's good, B, that the money's on screen, and ideally C, it looks more expensive than it cost. So I don't think that's different between Shaun of the Dead or The Running Man.
You have such an incredible knowledge of film, and obviously I think of something like Hot Fuzz when it comes to, seeing both Point Break and Bad Boys being a reference, but then even having someone like the great Edward Woodward, in a role in that movie that is referencing Wicker Man and the isolation within a community and knowing that something's going on underneath it all. With The Running Man, are you thinking about those influences? Because I'm sure you've talked about like Paul Verhoeven before, or even Stanley Kubrick with Dr. Strangelove. Are those references a place where you begin, and when do you leave those behind when you're filming?
I think some of that stuff is just I don't like sort of osmosis in terms of certainly like the Verhoeven films, like that kind of trilogy he did of sci-fi action satires are amazing to me because they are like a Trojan horse where you can, you create an action vehicle and smuggle a lot of commentary in as well. But I think with this, aside from the sort of it was also the feeling of like, I think I realized that when I grew up in the sort of 80s and 90s going to the cinema, that you used to get like a sci-fi action film every 3 weeks. And now
You don't.
there's like a scarcity of them. So in a way, you are like making a movie that you miss. That's one of the things that frequently seems to be something that I do is I'm sort of like kind of like is working in a genre that I miss seeing on the big screen.
And you're doing it for yourself as much as the audience that's watching it.
Well, you have to be the biggest fan. You have to make the movie that if you hadn't directed it, you would want to be the biggest fan of that movie. I think that's the way that I want to approach it in a sort of with sincerity is that I really want to. I always feel it when I can feel directors working in a genre that they don't actually like.
We won't name names.
We won't name names. But you could feel it too.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think I've ever done that.
No, there's a sincerity to it, and I love talking to you. I have to wrap, but thank you so much for
Thank you
doing
very
that. I really
much.
appreciate it.